Rawr!
angry about cats.
When did we all get this dumb? Almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear warfare. I don't see any bodies, so it doesn't count.
I'm angry about cats.
I'm the chef. I want to hear one thing. Yes, chef. Come on, man. Use your brain. The Why I'm Angry podcast starts now. All right, it's the Why I'm Angry podcast. And this is the chef. We're here in the Freestyle Man Cave studio. And like always, follow, like, and share us. You can be a part of the podcast by commenting on our live podcasts. Comment to the regular podcast, and we'll try to pick up those comments as we go through the week. And then the Why I'm Angry podcast at gmail.com. So if you want to send articles that you see, crazy stories, hey, how's it going? You can send it to Why I'm Angry podcast at gmail.com and be part of the podcast. And then also with that, we also have a support section. If you've been seeing our podcast start to kind of disappear later on, we've archived a bunch of our podcasts. And just as an added support to us, on Spreaker, we'll give you a link to that. It's $2 a month, and you get some never released podcasts. You also get access to some quick thoughts and things that I post from time to time, and add the election specials and things of that nature. So get on there, help us out a little bit. If we provide some value to you, help support us. Like I say, we make about 40 cents on the dollar, or 40 cents per month for just the advertisements that you see, and there's a bunch of them. We just don't have the following to garner bigger pay from those advertisings, and so we're just right now just kind of supporting the podcast ourselves, and someday we'd like it to be able to support us as we provide value to your lives. So get on there, help us out, and if you like I said, follow, like, and share. That's big. That helps us move up in the algorithms and things like that. So get on there. This week we're talking about freedom of speech. And honestly, we had this whole thing all lined up and wired up and set up, and somehow we had a glitch and lost about 20 to 30 minutes of the beginning of our podcast. So I'm going to get in here, kind of give you some context of where we're at, and then we'll move it into what we have recorded for you guys. And hopefully you guys get some good content, get some good ideas, good thoughts. This helps build a foundation, and that's really where we're at here is we're building the foundation to your own ideas. So if we can give you some thoughts on those ideas, and you say, oh yeah, I like that, I like those facts, and we're trying to bring you the facts. And so we're talking about freedom of speech. After there were 2 incidences from social media owners, 2 or 3 now. There was an incident where I think it was the owner of Telegram was arrested in France for not censoring or not monitoring his social media company enough that there were bad actors working on it. There were drug cartels and things of that nature, and there were people who were running different kinds of trafficking, people trafficking, sex trafficking, slave trafficking, that kind of thing on there. And that the owner hadn't monitored that enough or censored his viewership enough, that there was also some false news and things of that nature. And so that just it starts to beg the question of, freedom of speech, freedom of ownership of a company. I mean, obviously, your company, it cannot promote an illegal act like sex trafficking and things of that nature. Um, and that kind of thing should be shut down. But they also sent out the European Union sent out a strongly worded letter to Facebook, about censoring for things of COVID and things of that nature, and then they didn't call it censoring, but it's monitoring the verbiage and fake news and the false misinformation that they send out. And so we thought we'd get on here and kind of talk about, what why freedom of speech is important, and what's going on with freedom of speech. I know that they were also talking about Rumble, which we broadcast on, and the owner of Rumble fled the European Union so that he wouldn't be, arrested or whatever, because he runs a social media company that it's more on the leaning of, center to conservative. And it's just become a haven that, people like us, that we're counter to the culture, can find a space to continue to put out our word and to put out the information that people need to hear, without feeling like we're being, shadow banned or we're being held back. And so, that's a that's what's that's kind of what we're seeing here, is that things are starting to get, bad. Things are starting to get controlled. We saw in that the Anglican Church in England, is starting to control its verbiage of church. Church is becoming a bad word, or a bad, having a bad connotation in in religious and non-religious groups, that religion is holding us back and things of that nature. And so we wanted to get on and have a chat about it. Part of what, when I kick in here, what we're chatting about is that, intent of a word, intent of something you've said, is hard. It's a hard thing to legislate. So if if you get into some of these hate crimes and stuff like that, now you have to start to prove intent of what you did, and they're starting to try to figure out the intent in what you said. And they're trying to use some AI algorithms and things like that to read your body language, to read, they've been doing that for a long time, is to read your eye movements, to read all of this, to find what the intent of it is. Is this a joke? Are you a comedian? Or are you trying to be a comedian and you're just terrible at it, and somebody's offended, that kind of thing. And so, it's just it's one of those deals where it comes down to who who is allowed who is allowed to decide who how if it's offensive. We go to this harassment meeting during, for our jobs and stuff like that, and they say, well, anybody, if you tell a joke and it offends somebody, that's harassment. It's creating a hostile work environment. Somebody's offended. So, just be careful what jokes you tell. Well, if you tell a joke of any kind, jokes in general, are talk about, are can be against somebody. So, the intent of something is it, it's hard to read. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And we looked at the I looked up, it's not hard to find a bunch of stuff on the First Amendment's free speech. And it says that the First Amendment only prevents government restriction on speech. It does not prevent restrictions on speech imposed by private individuals. So people like Facebook, people like X or Instagram or whatever that want to censor you, they can because they are private entities. Yeah, there's no yes, you think it's a public forum, but it isn't a public forum because they can restrict who goes on there. They can restrict who, so it's a private entity. And so they're not covered by freedom of speech. But the problem is that we don't hold them accountable. We could hold them accountable, and then we would have a more freer spot. But so the other thing that we looked at was that what is protected by free speech. Um, Free speech protects everything but fighting words. Fighting words are words meant to incite violence, such that they may not be protected by free speech. Basically, under the First Amendment, if you yell fire in a theater, and that theater erupts in panic and everything like that, that's not protected in free speech. Even though yelling fire in a theater is not illegal, because you don't know the outcome. You could yell fire in a theater and no one everyone look over and laugh at you, and then it's not illegal. But if you incite some kind of violence or some kind of issue, then it's not free speech anymore. And unfortunately, that came through in 1942. It's the same thing with um the anti-Semitism laws that now, where yes, it seems like a good idea, and in most instances it is. But if I disagree now with the Jewish population, am I anti-Semitic? If I say that the Jews killed Jesus, is that a anti-Semitic proclamation? And so intent is a very, very tough thing to do, or to prove. And this is kind of what we're talking about when we're getting into this. And I'll let you just kind of decide where we're at on it. This is where we're at. We need to be learning how to disseminate and how to figure out the information and figure it out for ourselves. So, because we're getting so much information from both sides that, a lot of it isn't true. A lot of it's not facts. And so what the First Amendment is about is it's about having free speech no matter what. It's not about your intent. And so this is where we get into the free speech stuff. Hit the
Big
wrong button.
quantum leap in our culture and our judicial system where we allow that to happen. That ends in nothing good. And it doesn't end in anything
Right.
good.
And that's even because I remember they and I've said this. I'm beating a dead horse here, and I've said this a lot of times on the podcast, is that I remember when I was in fifth grade when they started to put into legislation hate crimes and the verbiage
Yes.
for hate crimes. And I remember thinking in 5th grade, I remember thinking, well, if they say something, if you say something against somebody, joke or anything, and they finally decide that they get to the point where they're sensitive enough to decide that that's now a hate crime. Like, what is a joke? A joke is
Right.
finding is finding something about somebody that is different than other people, and everybody kind of laughs about it. And sometimes that, and it can be offensive to the person or the people that you're making fun of. Is it harmless? Sure. As long as it stops right there. But if someone perceives it, like you said, as it's not being a harmless joke, as it's being pushed on as hateful or things like that, and then it becomes more than just a joke. Whether it was intended to be just a joke or not. We I hate to admit this, but me and my wife watch these um kind of these live games like Survivor
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
or things like that.
Reality
Reality
shows.
TV. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Reality TV
yeah.
shows. And we just started watching this Deal or No Deal Island,
Uh huh.
which is kind of like this weak spin-off of Survivor and Deal or No Deal and
Oh, okay.
that kind of thing, but they're not really surviving because they have these nice cushy tents and they kind of talk to each other from time to time in on the beach, and they have some like survival style things where they have to find the cases and stuff like that, and then they play a case game. And honestly, from the outside, from with my my thinking, I'm thinking, they're playing this game at the end, and it's like, this isn't about the numbers, this isn't about this is purely about the odds that you have.
Oh,
And the talking back and forth, like the one guy is stirring the pot so that he doesn't get voted off, and he's he took what somebody said as a joke. He's like, she said, she looks over and she's like, I'm gonna get you guys or something like that. And he just to continue to stir the pot against her says, well, I didn't think it was, I thought it was kind of kind of aggressive, and that it was, didn't seem like a joke. No, and in the interview room, he's like, it was 100% a joke. I understand it was a joke. He goes, but I got to stay in this game. And
oh, I see.
I feel like a lot of times we get to the point like we've desensitized ourselves so much that we've peeled off our levels of sensitivity, and now we're so sensitive that if someone says a joke about our people, then we're, oh, this is, reparations and things, and we've got, we got to get, this is heresy. This is against us.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to go. I'd like to get your opinion on this. Uh, this is kind of going back a while, but it used to be. Pardon me, because I'm an old man, but I thought it used to be. My memory of the way things used to be is we could hear someone tell a joke, and it might be distasteful, but we let it go. We went on life. We didn't feel like we had to penalize them or beat them up or ostracize them or run them into the ground. We accepted it that, okay, it's not something I would have laughed at. It's not something I really enjoyed, but give them some space. You turn around, you walk away, and you don't feel like you have to demand a retribution for what they said or did. But when did that change here? And it seems like now whenever someone says a joke that could be misconstrued or not, that the offending person feels like they have to demand blood. They need to have some uh, some retribution uh, meted out because that person offended me and damaged my psyche. So, am I imagining that change? Have you, in your lifetime, have you seen that change? And it used to be people got, I would say, got along pretty decent. You know, it would be not you didn't agree with everybody, but when you disagreed, you said, well, that's his idea, and you didn't feel like you had to, squeeze blood out of a tournament, make him sweat. Uh, what's your thoughts? Has that changed, or is it my imagination?
So I think there's three things that have affected that. So at one point we were super patriotic, and
Yeah.
we we did not agree with everybody, but we agreed that the freedom that this country allowed for you to be disagreeable was worth it.
Mm,
So you may not
yes.
agree with people burning the flag, but you agree that the ability to have that free expression is
Mm,
worth the fighting that we've done in other countries, and the wars that we've won and the people we've lost to win those wars and these rights.
yes.
And so partially with our school systems and things like that, we've weeded out a lot of patriotism. We no longer do a lot of our historical patriotism. We don't build a love for this country anymore. We don't build, at one point, you had you would sit down and think, do I go into the military and sacrifice that time of my life for our country, or do I just or is my time spent better doing something in the country to make my community better?
Yes.
So you would do one of two things, either that or this. The other one of the other things that have come along that has hurt our ability to interact socially is the internet. Used to be someone told an off-color joke, and it offended you, whether it was, morally, or it offended you, you know in your in your faith or whatever. You would say, hey, that wasn't my kind of deal. That's not my
Right.
kind of joke.
Yeah.
Or you would just realize that that person isn't somebody that you're going out to eat with later, or not going to be your best friend. And so you
Yeah.
would steer clear from that person for the most part. You would do your job together. You don't have to be friends to work together.
Right.
And I mean, you're not a work family for real
Right.
unless you build that kind of community.
But you didn't feel
And
like you had to ostracize that person either.
but right, you were going to work with that person, but you weren't going to go hang out with them afterwards.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to make it awkward at work. You had to make it work.
Yeah. Right.
But I think the internet has come along, and the world has gotten smaller. We're all standing on top of each other's toes, because you can see this on YouTube, and this person is putting this out, and this person is having this, and I went to this place, and I'm a he, she, them, they person, and all of that. And so you put your business out there, and then you get all offended that someone didn't agree with your business. Well, you're the one that decided to put it out there. And we don't take that kind of responsibility anymore.
Hmm. Yeah.
Words don't have the power that they used to, in the fact that you don't weigh what you say.
Right.
People
Yeah.
don't weigh what they say. I mean, you may personally, but people in general will go out there and type their whatever's out there, and you know, it's funny to hear the new slang and stuff like that. But some of this new slang, you're like, that some of the old slang didn't mean anything, because
Mm-hmm.
if you just make a word mean whatever, then it just means whatever. That's language in general. You make it so that the reason we have language is so that we can communicate with each other. And so,
Right.
third thing that has kind of corrupted that is that the welfare. So
Okay.
welfare in the beginning, we got some things from the government. We needed some things coming out of the Great Depression. But like, I guess what people don't realize about the Great Depression is that the regulations in in the stock market are what destroyed the stock market at that time. It wasn't the fact that somebody was super um, greedy and took super extra, took all these profits and took all the money out of the stock market. It was the fact that we regulated the stock market and not allowed the stock market to regulate itself, because capitalism will regulate itself. Yes, somebody may become super wealthy and become, that person who creates Google becomes the wealthiest person in the world. But at some point, that person, because of nature, will quit innovating,
Okay.
and somebody will come up underneath them with a better innovation, and Google will lose its market share. That's how it always
Okay.
works.
All right.
That's how it worked with the Rockefellers. That's how it worked with Carnegie's. People came in with a cheaper, as good or option, and they lost their market share. Whirlpool at one time had 80% of the market share. Well, in our legalistic society, 80% is a monopoly. You can't do that. Well, LG has now come in, Samsung has now come in. All of these different companies have come in and taken part of that market share, and they've come in with more innovative products. We now have, refrigerators that can order your own groceries.
Hmm.
But we don't see that as part of the regulation. We just want ours now. That guy's got a lot more than I do, and I don't care whether he worked twice as hard or 17,000 times as hard. It doesn't look like it. He's just making money hand over fist. We saw that in the food truck industry. When I started my food truck, it was super early on in the way that food trucks ran, and people just
Uh
thought we were just out there pirating food. We
huh.
we would sit in front of, if we sat near a restaurant, we were stealing from those restaurants.
I see.
And I would tell people, I'm like, listen, if my truck is better than your restaurant, you got an
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
I'm coming
Yeah.
in with food that people want to eat, and I don't
Yeah.
provide them seats. I don't provide them service to, at their table. I don't provide them drinks at their table. Then you need to think about this. You need to think that your service and the way that you're providing your food isn't isn't strong enough to detract from me sitting out there in a vehicle making food.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I think that we don't look, we're now in that point, at that point where the government has said, "Look, I'll take care of you." And so we say we're offended, and we go to the government, and the government takes care of that. Now it's illegal.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up on a couple of your points that I thought were really good. The first point you made was about patriotism and the willingness of our previous generations to put their lives at risk or to do special jobs here at home to improve our culture and keep our country safe. But that it seems to me that patriotism is predicated on a belief that there's something uh, better to protect then my own desires, my own wishes, my own safety. It's a recognition that uh, I can put myself at risk for something better, like protection of my family, protection of my friends, protection of the value system and the beliefs that I have. And if I wonder if uh, our reduction in patriotism these days is kind of suffering from us not recognizing that there are higher values and higher ethical principles than just what I want to do. I think we become very self-centered and self-absorptive uh, people anymore. And the second kind of follows up with that same thought in that your point about we just have to find a way of making it work. Well, there was a time where people weren't as affluent. People relied on one another. Even if you go back to the agrarian history of our country, when there were more people that had to work in the fields and the farms, they helped one another out. I mean, if one person needed their hay baled, the farmer next might come over and help them bale their hay, and vice versa. There was a cooperation and an effort to make things work. I like that phrase you said, is that people needed to find a way of making things work. There was a mutual experience of how people could get along. It wasn't antagonistic. And to be honest, some of it was out of necessity, but still, it was a good glue to hold people together, to make a positive out of two difficult situations, if people could come together, work together. So then, the, the kind of the follow up to your thought about the recognition of something higher that we need to potentially sacrifice ourselves for, like patriotism in a country, the well being of our friends and family, to understanding that, yeah, we got to make it work together. We got to find a way of working together. And I like both of those themes that you brought out. I wanted just to emphasize those because I think those two ideas, and the other one you brought on, the third one is the government control. I think that is a major threat to uh, family, friends, society. That once the government becomes in control, when they dole out welfare, uh, then they also become your bed partner too. They can tell you what you have to do. And now we're
Right.
ever more increasingly, particularly when you think about free speech and censorship, not only dependent on the government, but being controlled by the government. And I think those things really resonate with me. And the struggles that we have now, a lot of times can go back to those things you mentioned.
Well, I think we've talked about, the buzzword these days is socialism. Well, I don't know why we wouldn't want to do socialism because everybody pools their stuff together and no one has more than another. But if you look at it in the truest form, patriotism is a pure form of socialism because you're going to pool your resources, your talents to make your country better. You're going to take what you do and add it to the pot.
But the
And I
difference,
don't
though, but the difference, though, Aaron, is there's a major difference, and that is patriotism is voluntary.
right.
Socialism is not voluntary; it's
I
imposed.
know.
Yeah,
And
and I think there is a major difference there. I think.
in its thought and idea, it is a thought of everybody. That's where I like I said, critical thinking is it's got to be, you've got to look at all of the levels. But if you take it back to its simplest form, and I 100% believe that people thought when they started developing a socialistic style of life, that they thought, look at the Amish. There isn't really a major ruler over everybody. Now you watch those shows and you can see that that there is some oppression and things of that nature. And that's not the system being wrong, that's people being wrong. And I think that does come down to there is a flaw in all of us. We do have a sin nature as Christians, as people on this planet,
Sure,
is that
sure.
you don't have to teach somebody how to get around the system. No one had to teach me how to speed in my car. I just do a good job of that myself. And no one had to teach me
Yeah,
how to get.
yeah,
It's like my daughter the other day. She wanted some more animal crackers. She came to me and said, "Dad, can I have some more animal crackers?" I said no. So she went to her mom. Her mom hadn't heard what I said, so her mom
yeah,
says, "Yeah, go ahead and get some more animal crackers."
yeah,
And so she got more animal crackers
yeah.
because she's 2.5 and is super cute. But in socialism, I think it started out as, you know each of us come together with our strengths, and we pool those together. At one point, some dude's out there he's trying to grow tomatoes and carrots and beets and potatoes and cows and pigs and chickens, and just be able to provide everything that his family needed. And he realized, dude, I could grow a lot of carrots if you over there grew a lot of potatoes. And so then when we became a governmental society of socialism, then yes, someone controls this deal. And when we allow someone to control our freedoms, well, they're not free anymore.
Yeah, you're talking that there's a difference. What you're saying, I think, is that there's a difference between communal and community caring for one
There's
another and sharing and making things work, as opposed to some higher up authority that you don't know, that they don't know you, saying you've got to do it this way.
there's a
Yeah, that, to
difference
me,
between
that's
the
the breaking point.
philosophy,
Right,
the philosophy and the actual governmental system. When you put yourself in a system, there's rules, regulations, there's things that stop you. The only ever time that everything is going to be fair is if there's no one up there controlling things. Then you fight it out. You have the same opportunity to make whatever of yourself as anyone else. And if you put yourself in situations where you can't move up, then that's on you. But it's taking responsibility on yourself. I have in my life I've had every opportunity to better myself into a spot where probably financially I could be in a lot better spot. But I've also looked at the things that are important to me and decided and taken some hard decisions that probably didn't help me financially, but furthered my life as a lifestyle in fulfillment ways. Ways that I can, that I
right.
just I feel like that I've been able to impact and affect other people's lives, and I've been able to be a more impactful person, as opposed to, heck, I went to one of the best culinary schools in the nation. And not to say, but I have the skills and the imagination and the creativity to be one of the top chefs in the country.
I
But
agree that.
I also have the thought process that to do that is a lot of hard work. To do that, your food and your lifestyle becomes a religion of food. You work the weekends, you work the holidays, you work you work the hours, and your restaurant becomes your church and your sanctuary and your home. And you fight it out, and to really make it go, that's the way you do it. You build this one, and then you build the next one, and then you build the next one. And so I would have been replacing my lifestyle with, my Christian lifestyle with a food lifestyle. And unfortunately, you know, I that's unfortunately for the way that I was living my life at that time, you know, there wasn't a creator there. I was the creator. And so there there wasn't a future. It was me being the creator till I ran myself in the ground as a false creator. And so, I had to step out of that. I had to make the hard decision to, I can do so much, and I can be so much. And if that doesn't work out, then there's something else.
Well, what I hear you saying, Aaron, and I deeply respect the decisions you've made, but what I hear you saying is that uh, you had to be true to yourself as who you are generally as a person.
Right.
And you had to follow, I shouldn't say you had to, you chose to follow
Right.
the principles and the values that allowed you to grow as a person rather than grow as a professional chef, because you
Right.
saw that one direction would take you away from family and friends and personal growth, where the other path would help you fulfill those values that you cherished and that
Right.
help you grow as a person, as a Christian. And I wish every person had that same personal insight to be able to make those honest decisions, because, as you say, those are difficult decisions. Uh, when you see that you're sacrificing certain things uh, because of your desire to adhere to your personal values, and you see other people kind of pursuing the next buck, the next uh, step up in the bureaucracy or the corporation.
Right.
Uh, and I, but my concern is you are enough. You are a self. How do I say it? You're a self-contained person in a sense that you aren't easily influenced by a lot of the stuff going around. For you to be quote successful, you've got to do this and this and this, and to be liked, you've
Right.
got to do this and this and this. Uh, but there are a lot of other people. What I worry about is there's a lot of other people who don't have that ability to be discerning about what they hear and reflect, or the ability to reflect enough about, is this really true? Is this really a narrative that I really want to pursue? Is this really something I should pursue? Is it something I need to because I want to feel good about myself, or I want to be accepted by the group? I want to be part of the crowd. I want to be part of the in group. There's so many other people here that hear those messages and don't have that self confidence that you do. That the grounding would be a better word. You have a moral grounding that you're not going to be easily pulled into something that is antithetical to what your moral grounding is. But how do you do that? And how do you preserve that when you see, and I know you've worked with a lot of youth over the years in your church group and stuff. From your experience in working with young people, not that you're not young, you're still young.
I'm so old.
but
I've been
but
feeling so old this week, so.
but what's your advice to young people now who hear all these voices around them, all these strange speeches, strange voices saying do this, do that? What's your advice to young people these days? Because they are swamped by it.
So I guess it comes down to, like, and this is kind of to bring it back to the free speech deal. Why is free speech important? And it comes down to you have to be you have to get to a point where, like you said, you're comfortable in your skin. And so to get to that point, you can make the argument, oh, that's, you're born with that kind of confidence. And I don't think 100% you are born with that kind of confidence. I think
Yeah.
we've lost parental engagement in a lot of our children, and that's part of the reason that I do this. That's part of the reason that I do what I do, is so that our daughter grows, or my daughter grows up with parental engagement. Like, I want her to know that she can, she can think for herself, that responsibility is on her. We're teaching her right now, and this is, it's this tongue in cheek teaching her, but we're teaching her right now that she's responsible for her passy.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
if she goes
Okay.
someplace and
That's
doesn't
great.
have a
Yeah.
passy,
Yeah.
then
That's a
she
great
doesn't have a
idea.
passy.
Yeah.
And so, I still
And that's because
throw a
and
passy
that's
in my
because
pocket.
I was going to say that's because you've forgotten it 10 or 20 times. So now she has to
Oh,
keep
and,
track of it.
and part of it is like, listen, this isn't on me. This is this isn't my
I didn't
fault.
mean to. I didn't mean to interject that, but
Oh, that's
I
true.
couldn't.
That
I
is
couldn't
true.
resist.
I
I
have I
couldn't
have
resist.
forgotten it. I have forgotten it quite a few times. But,
Now she has
you
to
know,
remember it herself.
right. We and honestly, we're starting to try to wean her off of it a little bit. She doesn't get it during the day and stuff, and stuff like that. But I think that parental engagement teaches you ways to cope with things that you deal with in life. And
Hmm.
so, maybe as a parent, I won't remember to tell her, hey, when you deal with a situation of it's money or it's family, that family is the one that really should win out. And I may not, but I'm going to teach her multiple ways to look at things,
Right.
and
Yeah.
multiple ways. And so when I talk to youth about the different things about leaving, I've got a bunch of them that graduated last year, and I've got about, had like 3/4 of the youth group, like 8 or 10 of them are graduating this year.
Uh-huh.
And so what we've been doing is we've been teaching them. We started out last 2 years ago with fundamental Bible stories, the
Okay.
things that we take for granted that you learned in school, in Sunday school. But because
Right.
we're not a traditional Methodist church, maybe you didn't see it in Sunday school. Maybe
Right.
maybe you didn't go to that class. Maybe you were in service that day, or whatever,
Right.
and you didn't get to that
So you're
story.
giving them a grounding.
So we're giving them the base grounding. And
Yeah.
then what we're doing from there is, this year they're seniors, and so we're teaching a lot more with the senior group on leadership. And
Okay.
and and we joke a lot of times. We say these buzzwords like leadership or go pray or go, whatever. But leadership is really taking your thoughts and making them yours. That they're no longer your pastor's thoughts. They're no longer your mom and dad's thoughts. That these are these are the things that you think about because you have some kind of grounding in them, like you said. Building that grounding. Like, why don't I, as a Christian, why don't I believe in being gay or lesbian?
Yeah.
And why don't I believe in, and then what does that mean? If you if you come in contact with those people, and not that like those people are contagion or something like that, but it's like we've talked about before, that your argument is so great until you come up against a person who has lived it themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
So until your child is gay or lesbian, or until you have a gay or lesbian friend at work, then you don't know how you're going to react. Old Mike Tyson's saying that you don't know what you'll do until you've been punched in the face. You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
can practice for it all you want, but once you've been punched in the face, you don't know, until it happens to you. And so we talked to him about it, you know, that there isn't the judgment side of things. And this is what I think we've lost in society, leaving Christianity, is the judgment isn't us.
Right.
Judgment is God's,
Right.
and that we're here to obviously continue putting out God's love, that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and the gospel. But we're although I want you to know that whatever sin that is holding you back from the gospel is holding you back, I also am not judging you for it, because there are things that I do, there are sins that I commit that will hold me back, and that we all take it to the Father, and that's where the judgment, that's where the forgiveness comes from. And honestly, we saw a scripture, and this is just, I guess, kind of ADHD getting on the bunny trail, but we saw a scripture this couple months back that said, and it's the parable of the five friends that dropped their buddy through the roof. And we always talk about how good of friends those guys were, and we talked about it, actually. That was one of our leadership things, is that how do you decide, how do you get through the problems of life? Well, God will put people around you that will get you to your destination, whether those people are your work people that you don't have any love for, or law, or that they that have no, if you're in a woke company, and the people around you, you look around and you go, outside of this job, I will never talk to these people again. But those are the people that are building you up for the next step. These people are giving you the confidence, the experience to be something else in another company, and maybe a better company, or maybe it's, things like that. But these five guys dropped this guy in on Jesus's feet, and Jesus didn't say you're healed. He said your sins are forgiven. And so the power that God gives us is the power to forgive your sins. He didn't say I'm judging your sins. He said forgive them. And that's to take all that hurt and all that pain from other people's misguided judgment and to forgive it. And so I
So
think
that's
I
really
think
a great comment you just said, because that's the thing that I think is missing in social discourse when we talk
right.
about free speech, and that is the unwillingness to forgive other people. If someone says something that we don't agree with, or we may be sensitive to, we don't have that sense to forgive. We want to make them pay for it. We want to make them feel bad because we feel bad, and that is to me a very subtle, subversive attitude that has leached into our culture now. That if we have someone that uh, offends us or we disagree with, we want to make them pay. We don't want
it
to forgive them.
Yeah, it's not about understanding and being a community anymore. It's about you're wrong, I'm right. It's about
Yes,
being right. And
exactly,
and I think that
exactly.
that's where we've lost track, I think, with the freedom of speech, with all kinds of things, is that we're not having a dialogue. The freedom
Right,
of speech is the freedom that you have a side and I have a side. And what we've lost this last few years is that there's one side. It's the right side. It's whatever I feel like is right is right. There's no truth anymore. There's no facts anymore. It's what
Yeah.
I believe. And what you believe, I mean, there are, and this is going to sound terrible, but this is a Christian podcast and I don't care. There are a ton of people who believe in Buddha.
Mhm.
Ton of people who believe in Greek mythology. Ton of people who are starting to now believe in Baal again. Talk about a guy that's been dead millions of years, that maybe never was alive. And you and you and so truth is not, it's what you believe. And if you believe in something, we can't all be right. One of
Yeah.
us one day is going to die and they're going to be right.
Yeah. So it reminds me, I heard once that uh, when two people are entering into dialogue, discussion with one another, there's two approaches. One is to enter into dialogue or discussion with another person trying to understand, gain some
Right.
wisdom, gain some insight. And the other side is to win the argument. So it's not like you can if you enter into discourse saying I'm going to prove that I'm right, I'm going to win the argument, then there's no openness to any other sense of truth or understanding. But if you go into a discussion saying I'm not in the discussion to win, whatever that might
Right.
mean to that person, I'm entering into the discussion to understand and to add understanding to both of sides. Maybe we can both understand a little bit more about respective positions or opinions. And right now, I see far too much of the time, rather than trying to understand one another, we go into discussions wanting to win, and at all costs. We're willing
Right.
to be vindictive. We're willing to be intimidated. We're willing to coerce. We're willing to bully to win the argument, and that's really added a ingredient of our character that is very unbecoming and purposeless. It doesn't resolve anything.
And I think when we go at all costs, when there's not an engagement, a certain level of respect or engagement, I think like you said, we lose that respect for the other person, and we do it at all costs. We're willing to bully them. And a lot of times what's sad about it is we're bullying people about not bullying people.
Yeah, a lot of
Like,
times.
like you
Yeah,
can't, you
yeah,
can't be a bully. Like, I mean, I feel like the bullies that I had, I ran up against, everybody runs up against the bully in your lifetime. Like, even your bullies, there's a reason that they're bullies. Maybe their parents, maybe their brother, somebody in their life was bullying them. And so, you make your life decisions. You shape your, like you said, like I said, you don't know what you're gonna do until you've been punched. I was punched in the face by a bully, and so I knew when I got in a fight later on in life, I knew what was going to happen if I got punched in the face, by a bully.
So is
But
that why your nose? Is that why your nose is crooked?
that's why, yeah, I was also
No.
a goalie in soccer. We get kicked in the face a ton.
Oh,
So
I'm just teasing you.
we're
I'm just
we're the
teasing you.
we're the dumb ones that throw their faces at the, it's save it at all costs. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
to your
I
to
just,
your follower to your followers, Aaron's nose is really not crooked. I was just trying to tease him a little bit.
if you're not on the live podcast, you should be, because then you would realize that I have a nice straight even sided nose. No. fitting the size and contour of my no. But no, I think that, that the freedom of speech as a governmental issue it should be a non-issue. There shouldn't be any control over speech. Now, do I feel like you should be able to willy-nilly go out there and just like rip somebody to shreds and send them home crying? No, I think that, but I don't think it's a thing of governmental control. I think that's a societal deal. If we as a
Yeah.
society, make bullying an issue, then society as a whole will control that. But to make it illegal to say something mean against the Jews, or to make it illegal to say something mean against a certain sect of people, now becomes, honestly, it becomes racism.
Well, yeah, I
Because
would. Yeah,
now you have special consequences if you say something against those people.
yeah, that's an important point. That's a thing that I've asked myself many, many times is, say, the internet, would I rather have an internet uh, social media that is completely unrestricted, where anybody can say anything that they want to do, say, pornography, bullying, obscenity, all the terrible things that people can post, or do I want a all of which I can turn off or not even look at, of
Right,
which I can. I mean, if it's there, I certainly have the choice not to go online or not just can stay away. But it's my choice.
right,
Or do I want an internet where an authoritarian government tells me you can't? We're going to label Aaron's podcast as misinformation, and we're going to not allow him to be on the internet because he runs counter to what the government's position or narrative is, even at the risk of jeopardizing truth. And I think that goes back to your point just recently, is that you made just moments ago, is that I don't think that I like either one of them 100%. But if I had to choose right now, the way things are going, I would choose the open internet. People can post what they want to post, but it's me making the choice of what goes in my eyes and what goes in my ears, not the government, someone that can control what and how I think, because that to me is a lot more dangerous than, well, it's out there anyway, whether it's on the internet or any other place. The vulgarity, we talk about obscenity and language we have now, it's out there anyway. So we might as well learn how to discern truth and discern civil behavior, develop the discipline to avoid it, to not participate in it as we go. And to me, that's a much more responsible approach than it is to have truth taken away from me by a government restricting access. Because now,
right.
I mean, and you can speak to this better than me. I was reading this. What they do now is what's called shadow. What's it
Shadow
called?
ban.
Yeah, shadow banning now. I mean, tell us more. Maybe everybody else knows what that is, but explain this shadow banning now,
I
where
mean,
they
I'm
can
sure there are
just, and you
more.
don't know about it, do you? I mean, if they
Right.
take you off, what
Yeah,
is
you
it? I mean,
just you just all of a sudden you'll see less participation in your whatever social media you're on. So
so
instead,
somebody's
so
doing
the
that,
so all of these social media programs are algorithm based.
right?
So if we get on our podcast, this is why I tell everyone to follow, like, and share our podcast. The more likes, the more follows, and the more comments we get on our live podcast, or even on the podcast afterwards, the higher in the ratings we'll get. So if someone says, I want a conservative podcast, and in our search engine optimization, we've put that we are a conservative podcast, Christian orientation, all of that kind of thing, that we'll and so the more popular we are, the more often we'll hit on the first page.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, the higher up we'll hit on the searches. And so what will happen is, if they don't like your content, and that's what they even threatened me with on Facebook, and when I put up that meme, is that if I continued to put misinformation, that I would face being lowered on the search engine optimization.
And
So
they
that
can and they can even delist people, can't they? I mean, just
and
not
that's and
be on
and
the list at
honestly,
all.
they could take you they could take your account away from you. They could take you off. They could put you so low on the list that if you were, a lot of times what happens with these super popular podcasts, that the Joe Rogan podcast, they tried to take him off. They um tried to shadow ban him, but he was so popular that you couldn't stop him, luckily.
Yeah,
And
everybody
so,
noticed it.
people knew where he was at. They found him
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
And he had enough following. And so he went to a, luckily for him, he was the guy that could bring his following with him.
yeah,
Us, we're on like 9 or 10 different sites, and we're just trying to build that following.
right.
And so if we lose a site, well, I mean, that's sad, and things of that nature. But at least we're hedging our bets, and that
Sure.
site, will pick up people on other sites and stuff like that. And so if you've ever, it's like one of my favorite bands. Their name is Demon Hunter, and they're a hardcore Christian band. But they're also one of those bands that you go up to them after the concert, and you say, "Hey, I need some prayer for this or that," and they'll stop what they're doing right there, and they'll pray for you.
Hmm.
They're
Yeah,
a very
yeah.
Christian, humble band that just,
Right.
me and my brother, me and Honest Abe went to one of the concerts one time, and we were just joking around with them about, hey, Honest Abe wanted some of these, like, they had some collector socks. They were only they had limited edition, 1,000 of them made socks, and he said, I didn't see him at the merch table. I was going to try to get him, and one of the guys was just joking around, was like, "Oh, we can get you some socks from a concert, blah blah." And so afterwards, because we did the VIP, check it out, once in a, one of those
Sure.
once in a lifetime
Yeah.
deals where you just, I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah.
come, very
Yeah.
often. And so we did the meet and greet, and took a photo with him, and
Oh, cool.
with
Cool.
the photo of him. It's funny because I at that time I had a mohawk, and
Uh huh.
and Honest Abe is all tatted up and everything, and we I've shown it to people, and they're like, "Are you guys aren't in the band, are you?" And I was like, "No, but we do look we look like everybody else in the band at that point." And so, um, but yeah, so afterwards, Honest Abe goes something. They were kind of standing off to the side, just greeting people and stuff like that. He goes, "Hey, about them socks, I might, I'll take you up on that offer." And the guy's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna make a display of the limited edition socks
Oh,
and the
I see.
concert
Yeah.
socks."
Yeah.
And so he ended up, he ran back and got him a pair of socks, and
That's cool.
so,
Yeah.
but it was, it's one of those deals. But they had one of their, to get back to the actual story, they had one of their accounts get blocked. They were getting it deleted because it was associated with an account that maybe had been hacked and sent spam out. This is a part of Instagram that I don't really agree with, but one of our accounts was actually hacked, and because I don't post on it through Instagram very often, I post from other accounts onto that account. I didn't realize it. And so somebody hacked the account, changed our bio, changed our name on it and everything, and
Sure. Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
sending out spam messages about,
Yeah.
I don't know, cats or something. And so we got it got canceled. It got canceled, and nothing that I had sent me out the red flag. So I ended up getting on it the one day to check it, to post some other stuff and just update it with new artwork and stuff. And wasn't there, and so I had to go through a whole arbitration process of, this is our site, this, I don't know what
Yeah.
happened here, whatever. And so I don't even know if I even own the site anymore. We just have stopped Instagram posting, other
Yeah.
than to post some reels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, with these companies, and you hate. I want to fight them and say, look, this is free speech. This is, but at the same time, these are private companies.
Yeah.
Facebook
That's the
is a
hit.
private
That's the
company.
hitch. Yeah.
And here's and here and here's what I said about capitalism. That if you don't agree with somebody, you vote with your dollars.
Right.
So if you don't agree with the free speech on these social media accounts, don't go there.
Yeah. That's true.
And
Yeah.
somebody else who brings just as good of a product or even better is going to come up and be that next sounding board of freedom or conservatism or whatever, and you can be a part of that because they have your beliefs. But if we just say, and this is the part about voting and everything else, if we just say, well, I'm not big enough to do anything about it, then you're part of the problem.
Right. Yeah. I read recently an article, to follow up with what you were just saying, is the most um, effective way of countering uh, the constraint of free speech is to speak out louder. I mean,
That's
not
it.
vindictively, but to be clear and out and spoken clearly, and not be bashful about speaking out your words, which is what you were just saying in
Right.
terms of voting and self-expression. You know, exercise self-expression as much as you can.
In all honesty, like we've said, responsibility falls on you. If you want a free world, be responsible to make it a free world. If you want a world where everything's given to you, then that's your responsibility. You then, when things go down the way it is, it's on you. And you've really, honestly, in this world, you've got nobody to blame but yourself. Unless you live in North Korea, you pretty much have, if you live in America, you have pretty much all of the freedoms and rights that you could ask for. And we can say how this governmental oversight or whatever, but here in my home, the government doesn't rule. The government doesn't run things. And so, not that I'm out there, breaking laws or, hoarding missiles or something like that, but, I can speak freely the way I want to speak, as long as I'm not impending on somebody else's ability to speak freely. And so, that's where you get into these, freedom, the freedom of speech. It's meant to be protected as long as you're not, you know, inciting violence, or, that's the new word. Fighting words are meant to incite violence, such as that they may not be protected by free speech. So as long as I'm not impeding someone else's ability to speak freely, get out there, speak freely. And not that, like you said, not that you want to, incite violence, or that you want to, do it in anger or whatever. But at the same time, there are two sides to this. And if you watch some of these people, like you said about the Ivy League schools, or the top tier schools, and being a conservative or whatever. I mean, there was a lady that went to these people's house with a hatchet and threatened them, and she was a teacher at this school. Through all of their material about about abortion on the ground. And he's like, "What? Like, what's this? This isn't civilized. You've now taken this from a civilized conversation to something less than civilized. And in that, you should be ready to get whatever consequences that comes from." And that's not saying that I want you to go out there and, if someone punches you, you punch them back. But at the same point, if you're out there punching people willy-nilly and then you cry that you're offended, well, I've been assaulted, which is actually a legal ramification. And you can
Yes.
go to jail and you want to
Yeah.
cry about being in jail for that? You're an
Yeah.
idiot. You are stupid. Like there's no recovering from that. Those people should just be left in jail, and I don't think they can be taught any better. Like this is a teacher who's gone through the educational system. And going through the educational system and all of that, and her life experiences be whatever they are, but to incite violence, to be violent to somebody else because of what they've said or what they're doing is not pushing an agenda of freedom. It's not pushing an agenda of acceptance in any kind of way. And obviously makes me upset. So
Me too.
but
Yeah. Oh, good.
just to kind of, I know we've kind of gone off the on the bunny trails and kind of gone off of just the free speech thing, but I think it all kind of culminates together.
Yeah,
That
it
this is
does.
why
Yeah.
this is why it's the First Amendment. This is why it's the one of the, back then they put the amendments together in the force that they thought was the most important. And honestly, we were leaving a country where we didn't have the right to free speech. We didn't have a right to be represented by our own speech in any way. We were not citizens of that country, even though we had to follow the rules of that country. And so if you want to go back to, you want to say, oh, we get, something about, building this country on slavery. Yeah, King George built this country on slavery. We had no representation. We had no, and yes, it's a little different, but is still, could be seen as an oppression. And I think that's where they were at. They wanted us to have the freedom to speak. And that was whether we were in opposition or we were for whoever. And I think that's what they honored, that, that first Continental Congress was not a bunch of guys that were like, yeah, let's do this all together. It was 13 colonies of guys that, fought about whether they even wanted to build a Congress or they even wanted to build a government. They fought about, whether they wanted to, have a ruler of our country. And, all of them were treasonous at that point because they were going against their government to create a new government. And, that is what true freedom is to be able to go, to say things against your government without having a consequence or a pushback about it. Now, if I went and did something, then physically, pushed against our government, then there's consequences. But to say that I disagree should never be, if I philosophically disagree, okay. And at the end of the day, we could still be friends. I have plenty of friends that are liberals. And, we don't chat about that very often, or I forgive them and love them anyway. No.
Good
And hopefully they
approach.
do And hopefully they do the same though. As hopefully that
Yeah.
as
Right.
people we can see our differences. And it's like I
Yeah.
said before, you farm carrots and I farm potatoes, and we bring our differences together and we
That's right.
make this thing a great soup. This melting pot that we're supposed to be, that's what we make. But I think we've gotten to the point where you make potatoes and I make carrots, and I believe in my carrots. And they're
Yeah.
so much better than your potatoes. And you
Right.
shouldn't even ever make potatoes. And
Yeah. 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 But I do
and
like
that's,
potato soup.
I do love potato soup. I do. Carrot soup,
Yeah. No, not
not
so
so
much.
much.
Potato soup, I do
Not so
like
much.
potato soup.
Potato soup,
Little
yeah.
pieces of ham or bacon in it.
Little
Plenty of
celery in
butter.
there, some
Yes.
potatoes.
What kind of
Yep.
Put
Yep.
some seasonings in there, and
That's
you
right.
got a
Yep.
good winter soup. Yep.
Yep. Yep. It's about potato soup weather here. We're
Yeah, it
about getting
is.
there.
You're
It's
right.
70. We had
You're right.
70 degrees this week. I think we're gonna get back up to 90 next week, but
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So in the free, to just wrapping it up, final wrap up. It's not free unless it's free for all. It's not fair unless it's fair for all. Unless if you're giving a handout to somebody, it's not fair. It's not free. And so, honestly, some people need help, and there are some things, but if there's a regulation in your government to give those people those handouts, then they're not giving everybody those handouts. And based on whatever they're giving those handouts, whether you're poor economically or you're, a minority of some sort, that's, pandering to a minority. So, get out there, get some education on this. Obviously I've always said, don't take our thoughts for yourself. Don't take our ideas as the Bible. Get out there and educate yourself. And that's what I tell these kids is that, the Bible is the Bible, but you got to make it yours. And that's when you start standing on it as a foundation. And so, get out there and get these ideas for yourself. Live some life. Get an argument. And, do that. So remember.
Good.
I hit the button. Remember to follow, like, and share the Why I'm Angry podcast across all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast. The Why I'm Angry podcast ends now.